Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to be learning Maseches Shabbos Daf Kuf Beis 102. It is the last Amud in Perek HaZorek, which will bring us in Yirtzeh Hashem to the end of the page. And then the next Perek is Perek HaBoneh, and as it will start out today, we'll speak about certain aspects of the Isser of Boneh to help give us the beginnings of the scope of Boneh as it relates to the halachic process and to Hilchos Shabbos. Let us jump right in. Very first words on the top of Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. Masnisin, the Mishnah writes, Hazorek, a person who throws something, B'nizkar me'achar sheyatzasa miyado. So on the release, I had one intention, and then I remembered it's Shabbos. So I threw b'shogeg. That's what Rashi writes. Hazorek b'shogeg, v'nizkar shehu Shabbos, writes Rashi, after it leaves your hands. And then that's feature number one. Feature number two, line two, kol ta'acher, but let's say it didn't land on the ground like you intended, but rather someone caught it. Or kol ta'kelev, a dog catches it, oshenisrafa, or for whatever reason it burns up, you throw it over a fire and it just gets consumed in fire. In all of these cases, or maybe it's one case, we'll see soon that it's really more than one case, the din is that one is going to be pater, that one is going to be exempt. Next case of the Mishnah, Zarak Lasos Chabura. Let's say that I throw a golf ball at you. I'm whipping it at you as fast as I can on Shabbos. I want to hurt you. Bein ba'adam uvein behema. Uvein bebehema, by person or by an animal. Interesting as well. Is the Isser of Chabura only with a human? The answer is Nistama not, is that it's causing for the blood to be nitzrar, to collect by the skin. So maybe that's why it's even bebehema. And there's no Isser of Hakos Behema necessarily, maybe by Tsar Balei Chaim, but the Chabur itself, Lav Dafka, like there is by a person. But here the Mishnah doesn't distinguish. Benizkar, and you remember while the ball is still in the air, Ad Shelo Naases Chabur, the din there too is Pater. Zehaklal. And based on this, the Mishnah lays down a principle. And here's the principle that the Mishnah lays down. Kol Chayve Chatos. In any case where one is going to be obligated to bring a Korban Chatos, Einon chayaven ad shetehet chilasan v'sofan shegaga. From beginning to end, the ma'aseh that you do has to be a shogeg. A korban chatas is only ever brought when we are in the category of a shogeg. And therefore, it's interesting, the Mishnah then spends another 2 lines analyzing this. The last 2.5 lines of the Mishnah says, if chilasan shegaga v'sofan zadon, if in the beginning, like the beginning of our Mishnah indicated, that you were Zorek B'Shogeg, you started out, your Tchila was with Shagaga and Sofan, and at the end you recognize it was Shabbos and then you're amazed. Or Tchilasan Zadon, you started out with negative intentions, you wanted to violate Halacha, but Sofan Shagaga, and then in the end you really changed your mind, you didn't want to do that Aveira. Peturin Ad Shetei Tchilasan V'Sofan Shagaga, the Gemara, the Mishnah seemingly repeats itself, and that brings us to the end of the Mishnah. Now, we're going to analyze the first case in this Mishnah. If you look at the first 2 lines of this Mishnah, it really is difficult because one says that after you threw it, you remembered that it was Shabbos. And the second line adds in another variable, which is that your intention wasn't achieved because it was caught or burned up by a different intent. You wanted it to land on the ground and then either a person or dog caught it or it burned up in a fire. But there's 2 features here, so it's very hard to analyze. That's what the Mishnah, the Gemara opens up with 7 lines down on Kuf Beis Amud Aleph, Hanacha Chayev. What's implied from line 2 of our Mishnah is that if in fact a person or dog had not caught it and it landed where you wanted, that you would have been chayiv. But ask the Gemara, why? V'halo nizkar. The first case, the first line of the case said that you remembered that it was Shabbos, and that's mazid. And if that's the case, then you should not be held. Then you would not be pater. You should be chayiv in such a case. Hanacha chayiv, halo nizkar. So says the Gemara of it's not, and we know from the end of our Mishnah, Kol chayve chatos, einan chayaven ad shetei tchilasan v'sofan shagaga. And here you don't get to check off all the boxes because you remembered that it was Shabbos, and the remembering that it was Shabbos makes you amazed. And when you're amazed, you can't be chayav chatos. In short, what the Gemara is asking on our Mishnah is that the first case has 2 variables that lead to exemption. One is that you remembered that it's Shabbos, which means that you're amazed. Exemption number 1. And number 2 is that your intention wasn't fulfilled because someone, a person or a dog caught it, or the item you threw burned up in the air. So how do you balance the 2 variables? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Kahana. Rav Kahana makes a recommendation that will get rejected. Seifa asan lelechto umasna. What were we talking about? We're talking about a case where you throw something and the string is still attached to it. And that way you have the capacity to pull it back. Okay. Argues the Gemara right back to Rav Kahana. Wait a minute. Lechto masna ogdo biyadohu. That's not called zorek. Look at the name of the parak mamish is hazorek. You're not being zorek anything if you're still holding the end of the string in your hand. That's not called zorek. That's nothing. You're still holding it. It's the same thing. It doesn't count at all. It says the Gemara, Kigon sheniskaben lasos chabura. What does it mean what did Rav Kahana mean when he said that you're still holding the string in your hand? It's like a weapon. You're holding a string in your hand with a heavy ball on the end, and you wanted to do a chabura. And there, you're nizkar, that you recognize that you shouldn't be doing it, whatever the variations are in the Mishnah. But that's the case of Rav Kahana, that our Mishnah is talking about a case where it's belechto masmar. You're talking about something that's on a rope, and your intention is to do a chabura. Says the Gemara, that cannot be what our Mishnah means in that case, because we have another case in our Mishnah. Hanami tanina. We already learned this. Hazorek lasos chabura bein ba'adam ubein behema. If you wanted to injure either a person or an animal, the nizkarat shelo nases chabura, and you remembered that you should not do what you're doing. You became amazed in the process of throwing while holding onto the rope. So then, pater, you're still going to be pater. So you can't tell me that there's two dinim in the same Mishnah that mean the same exact thing. Ella Amar, and this is corrected to Rabba. Ella Amar Rabba, what must we be talking about? We must not be talking about Zorik. We must be talking about Mavir. Then asks the Gemara the obvious question, 1/3 of the way down. When our Mishnah says Zehaklal, what is it going on? Azrika Katani. It's going on our Mishnah, and our Mishnah says Hazore. You can't tell me that this Mishnah is talking about Mavir, of carrying something Daladamos. The whole Mishnah and the whole Perek is called Hazore. You can't retranslate the Mishnah of Perek HaZorek to mean that it's not talking about Zorek. There's no grounds to stand on. That doesn't work at all. Ella, 2 answers. And these 2 answers will bring us to the 2 dots halfway down the page. Ella Amar Rava. Rava says, what's going on in our Mishnah? Really, Tartik Tani. When I initially learned this Mishnah, I learned it to say that there's feature number 1, which is that you remembered Vinizkar, and feature number 2 is that your intention wasn't fulfilled. What Rava is going to do is change the operator. It's not and, it's or, 2 different cases. And here's how Rava learns this. Approximately halfway down. Hazorig Vinizkar, Ela Amar Rava Tartiktani. There are 2 dinim in our Mishnah. Case number 1 in our Mishnah is Hazorig Vinizkar Me'achar Shiata Samayado. You're holding a golf ball, and you launch it as far as you can. Now, when you threw it, you were a shogeg. You didn't realize it was Shabbos. The second it releases your hand, you say, oh my gosh, it's Shabbos. I'm not allowed to throw on Shabbos, you're pater. And case number 2, inami, another option. This is the change in operator. It's not and, but it's or. Different features of the case, different cases. Inami, lo nizkar, maybe you're still a shogeg, you don't remember. But why then would you be pater? Because the kol ta'acher or kol ta'kelev o shenisrfa pater. Because your intentions were not fulfilled. Either a human or a dog caught what you threw, or it burned up in a fire that you threw over. Whatever the case may be, your intentions were not fulfilled. So really, the Mishnah is teaching us 2 dinim, says Rava. 1 is nizkar, if your kavanah is changed, and 2 is if your intention wasn't fulfilled. Very, very clean answer of Rava. Rav Ashi, in a similar way, gives kind of 2 answers, although he bleeds them into one another with the Bamed Dvarim Amurim. Says Rav Ashi halfway down, Rav Ashi Amar Chasure Mechsra B'Hachiktani. Really, our Mishnah is missing some information, and here's what it should have said. Hazorek v'nizkar me'achar sheyatza miyado, a person who throws b'shogeg and then remembers that it's Shabbos after the release, after the item that he threw is in the air, and seemingly the operator kalta, and also your will was not fulfilled when you threw kalta acher or kalta kelab, either a person or dog caught it. Oh shenisrafa. So the din is in our Mishnah, that's pater, that's mamash quote in our Mishnah, right? That's exactly word for word, the first 2 lines of our Mishnah. So then says the Gemara in the name of Rav Ashi, hanacha chayev, but if in fact your will in regards to where you wanted it to land was fulfilled, that you wanted it to land, hanacha chayev, if it lands on the ground, you're chayev. Says Rav Ashi, bamed dvarim amurim, when do we say that you're going to be chayev? That's when you're shachazar b'shachach. We go back to the first variable of the Mishnah, not your intention of whether or not it landed, but your mindset of shogeg versus mazid. That's only if you're chazar v'shachach. And here Rav Ashi is teaching us a different din than Rava, which is that if you remembered and then forgot again, all in the hang time of whatever you threw, you got a good arm. If it's all in the hang time that you said, I remembered it's Shabbos, and then you forgot again. So then he's going to say, that's when you're chayav. Aval lo chazar v'shachach, if you still remember, then pater. Shekol chay vechatos. The reason you'd be pater is because of the klal of our Mishnah, that whenever we have a chiyuv chatos, it must have the following features checked off. Einan chayavin. you will only be held liable to bring a korban chatas the only time it will happen is when it is all within the realm of shogeg. And that brings us to the two dots in the middle of the page, machlokes Rava and Ravashi, in regards to how to understand the first two lines of our Mishnah. Do we say that there are two different cases, or do we say that there's a unique din of Ravashi, where it really depends if you were chaz or shachach, if you remembered and then forgot again that it was Shabbos. Okay, very good. Zeh haklal, says the Gemara within the two dots here. Zeh haklal kol chai v'chatos. We're going to now analyze that line of the Gemara, and we're going to do so by testing the limits of what does it mean shogeg all the way to the nth degree. Now, the klal of our Mishnah was that the only way a person would be liable for a korban is if they were shogeg the whole time. But says the Gemara, what about the following case? Itmar. This was a conversation in the times of the Amoraim, not in the Tanaim. Shtei amos b'shogeg. Let's say you're about to carry something 4 amos. We'll see carry or throw, maybe different cases. If you were going to carry something or throw something 4 amos, the first 2 amos were b'shogeg, and then shtei amos b'mezid. The second 2 amos were b'mezid, and then you go back again shtei amos b'shogeg. You're going to move a total of 6 amos. Now 4 amos is the threshold of Isser. The first 2 were shogeg, second 2 were mezid, and the third 2 amos were going to be shogeg. How do we analyze that? How do we understand that? That, on its face, seems to be a machlokes between Rabba and Rava. Rabba Amar Pater. Rabba says in this case you'd be exempt. Rava Amar Chayiv, and Rava says you'd be Chayiv. Now let's get into the lamdos of each of these. We'll see, again, in the Havamina, we're going to reject this, but in the Havamina, that Rabba and Rava just hold differently in a different area of halacha, which is playing out here. Let's see what that means. Rabba Amar Pater. Rabba says you're Pater. Afilu the Rabban Gamliel. Rabba says that even according to Rabban Gamliel, who holds Hasam, who holds elsewhere in halacha, who holds elsewhere, Hasam hu dechi kagamar shiur b'shogeg kagamar. In other places where, I think I skipped a line here. Afilu the Rabban Gamliel de Amar ein yedia lachatzi shir. Even according to Rabban Gamliel, who holds that yedia doesn't impact chatzi shir. What does that mean? If I do 2 parts of an isser, but I have a hakara, I have a yediyah in between the 2 parts of the isser. So Rabban Gamliel says that yediyah doesn't change anything. If I bring out 2 parts of a shear with a knowledge in the middle, I'm still going to be held accountable. So that's what he holds. So that's where the word afilu comes in. So Rabba says afilu, even according to Rabban Gamliel, who says that your yediyah, your knowledge between the 2 portions of your violation, the 2 half units of the isser, that it doesn't change anything, where normally you would assume that you're chayiv. Only Hasam over there would he say that you're chayiv. Hasam hudika gamar shiura, b'shogeg kagamar. Over there, when Rabban Gamliel says you're chayiv because he doesn't hold of the idea of yediyah lachatzi shir, where your knowledge in between 2 halves of a shir doesn't matter, there, that's only if the second part of your violation, the second half of your violation was done b'shogeg. But in our case, where were Amos 3 and 4? Remember, we started out 2 b'shogeg and then 2 b'mezid. So your second 2 Amos that you walked were done b'mezid. So there, says the Gemara, aval hacha de b'mezid lo. So that's why Rabba says you're pater, even according to Rabban Gamliel. Uvemai, what was the metzias of the case? Says the Gemara, ibizorek, if it's in zorek, that doesn't work because zorek is going to be a shogeg. The first 2 amos, the second 2 amos, you threw the whole thing with one kavana. The action was specifically that, according to Rabban Gamliel. Because remember, Rabban Gamliel holds that I don't care if your brain changes in the middle of the throw. Your intention started one way, that we're going all the way to the bank that way. So that would be how Rabban Gamliel understands that it can't be bezorek. Therefore, ela b'mavir, it must be that the way that Rabba understands that you're going to be pater, that's only going to be in a case of mavir. Because had it been zorek, you would have been chayiv because it would have been considered tchilas and v'sofan b'shogeg. Now it says Rabba again, but it's Rava. Rava Amar chayiv. He says you are going to be liable for a chatos. Why is that? And he says, according to the dissenting opinion against Rabban Gamliel. Ve'afilu the Rabbanan, even the Rabbanan who argue with Rabban Gamliel, de Amre, they hold yesh yediyah lachatzi shir. They hold that yes, your mindset does change things in the midst of your action. And if your mindset changes, you would be pater, even though normally he holds that you'd be pater when your mindset shifts. But here, even according to the Rabbanan, you'd be chayiv. Why would you be chayiv in such a case? It says the Gemara as follows. That's only when it's in your hand. And here, when it's not in your hand, that's not true. The Rabbanan would only say that there's yediyah l'chatzi shir, that your knowledge bifurcates the two parts of your actions. That's only true when it's biyado, but not when it's not. Uvemai, what's the metzias of the case of Rava? Says the Gemara, Ibn Mavir, Hare biyado. If you're actually carrying it to Dalet Amos, that can't be the case. Then everything is biyado. What does it mean, ein biyado? So that doesn't make any sense. Ela b'zorik. It must be that he's talking about the case of zorik. Now, if we were to spend 3 minutes analyzing this a little more deeply, we would realize that there is no machlokas between Rava and Rava. Because what did we conclude that Rava was talking about? We said Rava's talking about a case of Mavir, and we said Rava's talking about a case of Zorek. It's not a machlokas. It's talking about two different cases. And if you'll just take a look quickly at Rashi, 5-6 lines from the bottom. Dibur hamaschil aval hacha ein biyado. And look one line below that in the middle of the line. Umar amar chada, there is no machlokas here. So sikum hadvarim in this sugya is that when we say that one walked 2 amos b'shogeg, 2 amos b'mezid, there is no machlokas. Everyone agrees in regards to mavir that you're going to be pater, and everyone agrees in regards to zorek that you're going to be chayev, and that is how the sugya ends here. 10 lines from the end of the parak. Amar Rabba zarak v'nocha b'fi hakelev or b'fi hakivshon chayev. This Rabba is also changed to Rabba. A lot of nusach changes on this page. Obviously, the people who were initially copying over the Kisvei Yad, there's a lot of Rabbas and Ravas here. So they just made seemingly some typos, or some censors over the years made some errors as well to throw in some confusion, all possibilities. Nevertheless, Rava here indicates that it, not like our Mishnah. Remember, in our Mishnah, we said that one of the features, one of the variables that made someone pater is when your kavana, when your intent was not fulfilled. If you threw with intent to land and a dog caught it in its mouth, then you'd be pater. So then what is Rava talking about? Zarak, you threw. V'nacha b'fi hakelev or b'fi hakivshan. You threw it in the dog, and a dog caught it or landed in a fire. You're going to be chayiv. How can you be chayiv? Look at our Mishnah. Kol ta'acher or kol ta'kelish ocean isser pater. What about our Mishnah that says you're pater when that variable applies? If your intention was to land on the ground and a dog caught it, you should be pater. How could Rava say you're chayiv? So says the Gemara, a very important principle. Hasam de lo mechavein. There, by Rava, where he says that you're going to be chayiv, you don't care where it landed. You threw for the sake of throwing. You had no intention for it to land. Hacha, in our Mishnah, to come a chavein. You dafka wanted it to land. And because you dafka wanted it to land, so that when it doesn't land, you're going to be pater. But Rava was talking about a case where your intention was not to land. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi bar Abaye, Afana nami tanina. We already learned this idea. Where? We learned this in Maseches Krisus together many months ago. And there, what is the Mishnah? Is it a Mishnah? Well, yeah, I think it's a Mishnah or Brisa. The Mishnah or Brisa there says as follows: Yesh ochel achila achas v'chayev aleh dalet chatos. Okay, good. Hopefully some of us remember this. I'm not one of them. There are those who eat one achila, and they can violate 4 averos that require a korban chatas and an ve'asham echad. It's an unbelievable task. You do 1 ma'isa achila, 1 hanas garon, 1 bracha shehakol ni'eh bidvaro, and you eat it, you're going to be chayav. What did you do? It's hatame, a person who's not allowed to eat food because he's a tameh. Sha'achal chelev, he ate the chelev, and the chelev was nosar, who nosar is left over, mina mukdashin, from food that was holy, b'yom kippurim. So Rav Meir says, you came up with 4. I'm going to come up with a 5th one. Rav Meir Omer, afim haisa Shabbos ve'otziu b'fiv chayev. Even if you can add another one on Shabbos where he was carrying it out. So what did they say back to Rav Meir? They said back to Rav Meir, come on. That's ridiculous. That's circumstantial. We're not talking about Shabbos. Amru lo, eino min Hashem. The Isra of Hotzah isn't involved in this. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. You're assuming that you would have been chayiv for carrying out something in your mouth on Shabbos. Ve'amai. According to everyone, why would you be chayiv in that case? Ha'ein zerach hotzah b'kach. We don't carry things out in our mouth. That's not normal to carry something in your mouth. So says the Gemara, what do we see from this case, from this Brisa and Maseches Krisus? Ella, Kevin de Kamachavim Machshavto, because he had intent, because his intention was to carry, that's what Rav Meir was adding. Because his intention was to be specific and carry something in this way, then Meshavia le makom, that's considered an appropriate place to carry. Hachanami here too in regards to our case. where we otherwise might have thought that that you would have been pater, why in our Mishnah do we say that we're so makbid about where it lands? But the answer is hachanami in our Mishnah, where we said that if a dog catches it, if anybody catches it, or if it burns up, you're going to be pater. Kevan de kamechaben machshavto mishavya makom. We treat it as if it is a specific intention, and therefore you are going to be pater in our Mishnah if it doesn't land where you intend. Baruch Hashem, hadron ala chazorik, hadron ala chazorik, hadron ala chazorik. In Yirtzeh Hashem, 7.5 years from now, we will come right back to this page. Turning to the top of Kuf Beis and Beis, we're going to be starting Perek HaBoneh. And this first Mishnah opens up with a very simple parameter. How do we define boneh? What's the minimum threshold? And the Mishnah asks, Haboneh kama yibana v'yehei chayev. For the builder, how much does he have to build in order to be liable, in order to violate whatever the Isser is on Shabbos? Says the Gemara, Habona kolshu, there's no minimum share, it's anything. Veha misate, someone who chisels, veha make bepatish, someone who hits with a hammer, uve mitzad, uve ma'atzad, a different type of hammer, veha kodech kolshu, someone who drills a little hole. Well, we're going to focus on this a little bit today. Someone who drills a little hole, there too, chayev. Seemingly, with all forms of hammering, you're going to be chayev. Even drilling is a form of hammering. Zaklal. This is the guideline. Kol ha'osem malacha, anyone who does an action. Umalachto miskayemes b'Shabbos chayev. And their action remains throughout Shabbos, they are going to be chayev. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel adds, Omer af hamake bekurnas al hasadon b'shas malacha. Even someone who wants to maybe flatten out the front of their hammer by hitting it on an anvil, that's also going to be considered malacha chayev. It's as if you are fixing something for the malacha. And that brings us to the opening of our Mishnah. Asks the Mishnah, Kol shehu lemai chazia. This is a little vague. You would have thought the Kol shehu was talking about the first Kol shehu in the Mishnah, but it's not. It's talking about hakodeach Kol shehu, when you poke a little hole, when you are boneh, a little hole, hakodeach. So that's what the Gemara is asking, hakodeach, whatever, the case of kolshu, lemai chazia. What is that little hole good for? So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yirmiyah, shekein ani chofer guma lehatzniya baprutosa, that a poor person will poke a hole in the ground. That's a safekeeping. They're going to keep their coins in the ground. And where do we see this precedent in the Mishnah? Dechavasa gabe mishkan. We saw something like this in the Mishkan, shekein tofre yurios, those who were stitching the urios, the sheets. Remember the sheets that we learned about a couple of blot ago, the undersheet, the urios hatachtonos, which were the colorful ones, the urios halionos were made out of the goat hair. What do? Chofer and gumalatz ni'abamachtan. They also would keep their needles, which again we can buy them in bulk. They only had a few. They would keep them and hiding in the ground. Says the Gemara, no way. Abai Amar Kaven Demashtache Lo Abdehachi. The ground is very moist. It's going to cause for things that are made out of metal to rust. There's no way that the precedent for the coins in the ground was from our mikdash, from our mishkan, by the people who are tofrei rios, that they would keep the needles in the ground. That's not correct. That's not reasonable. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ella, what it must be is shekain ani ose pitpute ki raktana lishpos alav kedei raktana, that a poor person would dig small little holes in the ground in order to stand up a little tripod to hold up a pot, a small little thing to hold up a pot to make a fire. The equivalent of what would be today's Bunsen burner. So says the Gemara, that can't be either. Says the Gemara, de kavase gabe mishkan. We had something similar in the Mishkan as well. Mavashle samanim litzboa. There were people who used to cook spices to color. Urios shechas malachtan. They would take pots and they would make small pots to make any extra dyes that they need. Osin pitpute ki raktana lishbos leha yo raktana. And there too, they used to do these small little types of pots, a small batch. They'd bring up the smallest pot. When you're making noodles for 1, you use a smaller pot. You're making noodles for 5, you make a bigger pot. You're making noodles for 20, you make an even bigger pot. So here, by the poor person, that was the standard, and we have a reflection, a precedent back in the Beis HaMikdash by the people who were going to make dyes for the garments that were needed in the Mikdash. 1/3 of the way down, the Ravacha Bar Yaakov turns this down. Amar, no, and we've seen this principle before. Ein anius b'makom ashirus. The Beis HaMikdash was a makom ashirus. There, we didn't have the standards of the poor. There we had the standards of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. We had the highest standards ever. You're going to tell me that we're going to say that the Isser that we have on Shabbos of making a small hole in the ground is after a poor person who is going to cook a small amount of food in a tripod? Ein aniyus b'makom ashirus. That there's no such precedent like that in the mikdash. Everything we did in the mikdash was the shpitz. We did it the right way. So says the Gemara, if that's the case, then what is the isser of kodeach kolshu? What is that shear, that minimum shear of poking a hole? So says the Gemara, turning it on its head a little bit. Ela shekain balabayis sheyesh lo nekev b'biraso v'sosmo. It's not the hole. It's the filling up of the hole that we were concerned about. That if you make a hole and you're going to end up filling it up, that's going to be the problem. The kavasa gabe mishkan, and the precedent that we had in the Mishkan was shekain Karesh. If you had one of the boards shenafla bodarna, if there was a hole made by a worm, by an animal of some kind, matif latocha aver, you'd pour some metal, some lead into that tiny hole to make sure that the walls were closed up. It's a mikdash. In my basement, in one of the playrooms, we have a baseball, football-sized holes in the walls. No, we're not going to spend money on that wall. But in the mikdash, we don't leave little holes in the wall, and it's just inevitable that there's going to be holes in the wall in the mikdash at some point by the darna, by these types of worms, and we're going to fill it up. So therefore, the small holes led to a problem. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, "Hamitzadei desa'even," someone who is going to place a stone on the ground, chayev. What does that mean? You place a stone on the ground, you're going to be chayev. Wait, every stone you place on the ground, you're chayev. What is that even talking about? So we're talking about building a building.
He wedges it in.
Yeah, I'm explaining that now. Yeah. So what you're doing is you're placing it on the ground in a way that's going to be meaningful. Meisive, the Gemara asks, this is a Tosefta. The Tosefta says, Echad nosin es ha'even ve'echad nosin es ha'tit. If a person brings a stone and another person brings the clay in which to affix the stone to the ground, different than our initial statement that we saw in the name of Shmuel, hanosin es ha'tit chayav. The second person is chayav. The person who brings the clay is chayav. What do we see from there? That placing the stone alone is not going to make you liable, but rather that which affixes the stone to the ground, not the fact that you placed it in the dirt, but the fact that someone came around and they took mortar and they made it really stick in the ground. That's what you're going to be liable for. Kasha and Shmuel. Shmuel bites back. According to you, Ema Seifa, look at the end of the brisa. The next few words are taken out by the Gra. If you take bricks and put them on top of the initial bricks, then the next layer of bricks, you're also going to be chayiv. So which one is it? We have three Mari Makomos. We have putting down a brick with no mortar. We have putting down bricks with mortar, and we have putting down bricks with no mortar on top of other bricks and they're going to be chayiv. So which one is it? Says the Gemara, you're right, and you're right, and you're all right. And that's exactly how we answer. Ela tlasa binyane habu. There were three aspects of building bricks. Tata, the bottom level, mitzia, the middle level, the Eloi, and the top level. Let's go through each one. Tata, the lower level, ba'itzidude ve'afra. There, you need to put the brick in the ground, like Rabbi was saying, you have to wedge it into the dirt. But there's no mortar there. There's no clay that's being used. Mitzia ba'inamitina. The second layer, if you've ever seen anybody put bricks on, the second layer, you put down mortar and you smooth it out a little bit. You slap on the second brick. That's when you're going to be chayiv in that case. Eloi, but on the bricks that go on top of that, the hanocha be'alma. There, even if there's no mortar at all, you're going to be held accountable. That's wild. Whoever would have thought that without mortars? Anyone who's building houses, the bottom layer could be ushered just by wedging it in deeply into the dirt. The second layer would require mortar, and the third layer requires nothing. Just placing it on top, you will be chayav for bonet. That brings us to
how about the stones of the kosel?
Stones of the kosel, if they're sitting there, they would have all been, if they were built on Shabbos, they would all be held chayav. Yeah, absolutely.
No, but saying that they're built, there's no mortar in between. It's just one on top of the other.
So the bottom layer would be chayiv at a minimum of dirt. It has to be wedged in. If it wasn't wedged in, you wouldn't be chayiv. The second layer is only going to be chayiv if there's mortar. And the third layer would be chayiv, like you're saying, even bahanacha, even placing it without any mortar at all. The last sugya we're going to be talking about is chiseling, bahamisates. Says the Gemara, misates mishum mai mechayev. Now, before we begin this, I just want to highlight, we're going to be learning three different halachic sugyas right now, all of which have the same exact machlokas amoraim. So let's learn all three cases quickly. Misates, in regards to chiseling, mishum mai mechayev, Rav amar mishum bona, u'Shmuel amar mishum makeh b'patish. Rav says that you're chayev because of bona, and Shmuel says that you are going to be liable for makeh b'patish. Makeh b'patish, of course, is putting the final touches on a particular activity. Case 2, a person who makes a hole in a chicken coop, there you're going to be liable for something. Rav Amar Mishum Bono, Shmuel Amar Mishum Makeh B'Patish. Same Machlokes. Rav says because you're building something. Shmuel says because you finished the product. Ayel Shufta B'Kupina Demara. You take a screw or a nail and you affix it in a handle to make sure the handle stays in the pot. So there, Rav Amar Mishum Bono, Shmuel Amar Mishum Makeh B'Patish. Whoever you hold like, in all three of these cases, we're going to say that this Machlokes Rav and Shmuel applies. So it says the Gemara, a key word, vitzricha. All three of these machlokos are critical in nature. We cannot do without any of them. And this vitzricha, as we know, is going to be a thorough analysis of all three cases as to why we need each of the three cases. And with that, we will cap out tonight about 5 lines from the bottom. It says the Gemara, vitzricha, we need all three cases. If you only told me the first case of Rav and Shmuel by chiseling, and Rav says boneh, and Shmuel says makeh b'patish, I might have thought, in the case of chiseling, Ka'amar Rav says it's boneh, Mishum de derech binyan bekach, because you have to chisel in order to build. However, maybe aval oseneke belul shel tarnagolim, maybe making a hole in a chicken coop to ein derech binyan bekach, emamo delay the Shmuel. I might have mistakenly assumed that maybe he would have agreed by the lul shel tarnagolim, by the chicken coop, to make a hole there is not considered derech binyan bekach, and maybe Rav would have turned and held like Shmuel that it was not boneh, but it was rather makeh b'patish. Kamash Malan, they had to articulate the second machlokes by the lul shel tarnagolim to make sure that we knew that Rav Taka held that was boneh as well. And if the middle case is was the only case that was taught, the case of making a hole in the chicken coop, so then maybe we could have argued that there Rav would have held his shita that it's considered boneh because it's at least similar in concepts to boneh. However, because the avde la'avira, we're going to make that hole so that there can be some airflow. Aval shufta bekupina demara. However, tightening a screw in the handle to make the handle stick to the pot, there the ein derech binyan bekach. That's not how we build houses. That's not how we build things. You're connecting a handle. That's not boneh. Eimamo delay l'shmuel. I might have argued that maybe that's the makeh b'patish of building the kli, is just tightening the screw of the handle onto the pot. Therefore, we needed case number 2. And if we were only talking about the third case, so there, beha ka'amar Shmuel. Maybe there Shmuel would have said it's makeh b'patish. Aval hanach tarte. But in the other two cases, there maybe he would have said eimamo delay the Rav. Maybe he would have agreed with Rav in the other cases, which are, those other two things are more binyan oriented. Maybe he would have turned the corner and said, "You're right, Rav. I don't hold like makeh b'patish in those two cases. I agree with you that they're boneh." Kamash malan, that he still holds it in all of those cases they're makeh b'patish, and therefore. We needed all three cases, v'tzricha, all three cases to make sure that we didn't make any mistakes about the shitas of Rav and Shmuel. In other words, there's a machlokes of Rav and Shmuel, and all three of those cases, Rav says that all of them are boneh, and Shmuel says all cases are makeh b'patish. We will stop here. Mirz Hashem, we will pick up tomorrow night, Wednesday night, 4 lines from the bottom on Kuf Beis Amud Beis. Wishing you a beautiful night.